just taken delivery of our Sim Labs P1X Ultimate Cockpit. It's time to assemble it, so we'll talk you through every step in this video. However, bear in mind, in amongst all these boxes, there is a lot of accessories, so these are extras that don't come included with the Sim itself, but it's well worth picking these up at the same time, or even add them on at a later date. Before you get started with the assembly, there's a few things to note. Take 5 minutes to familiarise yourself on the Sim Labs website with the instruction manual. Doing this will help streamline the assembly process and hopefully speed things up. It's worth grabbing a few things before we start as well. The Stanley organiser boxes, or just any organiser box of any description, will help organise all the nuts, bolts and accessories throughout the build process. Any spares, etc. can go into here, or even before you start, you can organise everything out into size, making it much easier to pick and choose the nuts and bolts that you require throughout the build process. Having a ratchet is going to speed things up and make the build process a lot easier. Using the Allen keys, etc., yes, it works, but they're just fiddly and they're not fun to use. T-handles will be a better option than the pre-included Allen keys. Obviously these are a lot more sturdy, a lot nicer to use, a lot more ergonomic. So again, just avoid the normal Allen keys if you can. Something like this or the ratchet, much better option. That's enough of me rambling. I've got to move all of this back out of the way so that I can actually start to take everything out of the boxes and assemble it. I'm going to try and separate the accessories from this video, so hopefully it's just everything that will be included in your P1X Ultimate assembly. So that's most of the boxes out of the way. Sim Labs do label each of the boxes with the contents, however, for some reason I've stupidly decided to put the shipping labels over most of those sort of contents labels. It's going to make my life a little bit harder, so hopefully I can just crop out everything that's not necessary. Fair play to Sim Labs, everything so far has been extremely well packaged. There's no scratching on any of the profile. I've had rigs in the past that have come damaged straight out of the box, so kudos to Sim Labs for the proper packaging. Let's keep going and get everything unwrapped and ready to start building. After unwrapping a ton of boxes, I finally found the one I was looking for, which contains the majority of the nuts and bolts for the base assembly, as well as the corner brackets, etc. So we can finally get started on building the base of the Sim. As I mentioned at the start of the video, refer back to the instructions and keep an eye on the stages that you're at. So say we've only just got the start of the Sim unboxed, so we need to locate A1 and A2 along with some of the M8x40 bolts and the M8 washers. Obviously it does tell us here as well on the top left of our components. So we've got the 1350mm and the 500mm, which is our A2 and our A1 lengths of extrusion. So let's grab those and start to put this together. Now, following on from the instructions, one thing to note here is the counterbores. Obviously this is a sided piece of extrusion, so we need to ensure that the counterbore section is on the outside of the simulator, and again with this side, so set that up so it's facing away. And then what we're going to do is this side is pre-drilled, so that's going to sit just inside. Just take extra care, because if things fall against each other they're going to scratch, so we want to just take our time and ensure that we're not damaging anything. So we've got the M8x40 bolts, and then we've also got the washers as well. So just referring back, it is washer on the outside. So I'm going to thread those in first. And thread that through nice and carefully. Same for that one. I'm going to start these just by hand, just so I've got a little bit more control. Same there. now onto the rear side. We need our corner brackets. And some of our 20mm long M8 bolts. And for this one, it appears we don't need any of the washers. So I've never used these before, so that just sits on there, he says. Thread that through, start this by hand. So that is now the rear, the sides, and obviously the sort of frontal section where the seat will mount. So let's grab the next pieces and keep going. I've already cut my finger open and I'm sweating like shit. So now we're going to grab our two accessory boxes which relate to the feet assembly. So let's unpack everything here. That one down a little bit until that reveals the thread through the top. Bit more to go. Obviously we're going to need to level this as well. Being on carpet, it shouldn't be too bad, but that's what these are for. So obviously washer back on and then bolt back to the top. I'm going to take that down quite a lot more, yeah. Just so that sits just beyond the threads. Okay, so that is the first one assembled. Slide them in. Obviously they don't need to be in exact positions as yet. We can adjust that and move that, which is the biggest plus side of the aluminium extrusions, is everything is fully adjustable. Whereas with a tubular sim, you are limited. Okay, so now I've got to think because everything is upside down. So they're going to go that way. There's no washers for these ones. Okay, so that's now the feet attached to the bottom of the sim. In the instruction manual, it doesn't actually give you any dimensions of how far to go in within the rig. So I'm just going to take a tape measure, measure these out, have a bit of a guesstimate. So let's see what we think works. So I'm going to go from the top of the sim and I'm going to come down to, let's go to 10 centimetres, which is roughly 4 inches. It is 4 inches, sorry. Let's nip that one tight now because we know that that's where we want it. And the same for this one, which doesn't look too far away. In fact, that one is already bang on, I think. Okay, now let's go to the bottom ones. I'm going to do the same. So from there, go to fucking hell forwards. A brilliant guess. That's pretty much there. I'm going to go a tiny bit up. Okay, so that's the feet now levelled in terms of the position on the sim. Obviously when we put it back down on the ground, we're going to have to level the height. So you may need a spirit level, or you can obviously do it with your tape measure. Obviously everyone's floors are going to be different, so there's no right or wrong way to do this, but take your time to do it now before there's too much on the simulator and it becomes a pain to move. Doing it at this chance, it's easy to stand it up, manoeuvre it around. So level these out now while we've got the best opportunity. So carefully unwrapping the 500mm profile. Something I noticed that wasn't the most clear in Sim Labs instructions for the 500mm length of profile for your seat base is that, again, they do have this recess for the bolts. If you look very closely and zoom in on the instructions, you can see that this piece goes on the top, and I'm sure that would be common sense once it's assembled. However, don't make that mistake and ensure that the recess is at the top rather than at the bottom. So we need 4 more of our T-nuts, and we're going to pop those into the top side. Place the profile roughly on top of the way the T-nuts are, giving us a chance to align everything before we try and bolt it in. So we want the M8x40s and then a handful of washers as well. So washers go top side, threaded through the profile and down into our T-nuts. So that is the profiles for the seat base roughly in place. I've left these loose to allow me to adjust them once the seat arrives. With the seat base now roughly in place, it's time to start assembling the foot plates for your pedal mounting. Now see, that's much better, Sim Labs. This is what we should have had for the main assembly. Every nut and bolt is all labelled clearly. We know exactly which ones we're grabbing, and there's no chance of grabbing anything that's the wrong size. I'm not quite sure why you would do that in the pedal plate assembly but not in the chassis, but here we go. That looks like it goes into that one, which I'm going to assume will give us some front and back adjustment depending on the type of pedals we've got. So for this one we want the M8x30s, which are clearly labelled. So I'm just going to line up all the washers quickly. Makes it a lot easier when you're trying to bolt everything in. So we've got 4 each side. So we've got the flat washers on first, and then it looks as if we also have some of the cap washers as well, which are more of an aesthetic than anything, but this is what you get when you pay £1,500 for a simulator, obviously including all the accessories. So obviously with this you want the M8x30, the flat washer, and then the captive washer there as well, or the cap washer probably is what it's called. Let's thread all of those on as well. I do like these little touches as much as I just joked about it there. I think these are the parts that make Sim Labs stand out from the crowd. So these are obviously pre-drilled and threaded into the profile. So it's just a case of lining them up and then threading it through. So I'm just going to get them all on and finger tight first. So there's actually 2 in this top one and 2 in the bottom. Now again, by leaving these just finger tight, it's going to allow a little bit of movement to ensure that everything lines up before we pull it tight. So on the pedal plate, just bear in mind you have the slot nuts for M8, M6 and M5, so just make sure you're picking up the correct ones. So for the next stage we want the M8 ones. And we are going into the side, on the insides of the rig, and we're going to go on the second one down. So next up we're going to want some more of the cap washers,
we need 4 of the standard flat washers and our M8x40s, and this is what's going to actually secure the pedal plate to the rig itself. So we've got 4 of those there again. And we want to position the smaller plate towards the seat and the bigger plate towards the front. Now this is one of the things where building the simulators, you almost need to be a fucking octopus, because I need to hold this rather heavy foot plate in position and bolt it in. So sometimes it's good to have another set of hands, but if not, just struggle and whine about it a little bit. So I'm going to prepare all of my bolts. So again, flat washers on first, then the cap washers. At least everything's prepared, so I'm not fiddling around trying to thread washers. So that's in now and just finger tight. Obviously the position of your pedal plate is going to be a very personal preference. Some people even have them inverted. So this is going to be something that you are going to change and adjust to your own needs. I'm just going to kind of wing it a little bit at this stage, and then I'm going to adjust this later once the simulator is fully assembled. So we're going to take 4 of our T-nuts and slide those in to the end of the profile. And effectively we're going to have to do this process twice, but just on a reverse, because obviously we've got a left and a right. Now, I've never built a sim where I've needed a hammer before. 10 out of 10 for the snug fit on your end caps, Sim Labs. Okay, with the end caps on, the sandwich plate's going, and obviously you've got the sort of beveled side of the sandwich plate, so that's going to go on top of our T-nuts, which I'm going to have to align. So these ones use a M5 or a 5mm, so we just need to downsize from the 6s that we've been using throughout the build so far. Just nip all of these tight. They don't need to be over tightened, obviously they will bottom out on that plate, so they will only go so tight. Now with the sandwich plates on, we need to ensure that this is all straight and equal. If one sandwich plate is more to one, say higher or lower, or is even tilted, the entire wheelbase area is going to be off-centered, and ultimately that will also affect your monitor mounting. So this is absolutely crucial to get this level and square and everything to sit true. So spend a bit of extra time, measure everything twice, and then secure it down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the end plate in place, and I'm going to bottom out this sandwich plate up to that, and then there is no way it can be off-centered or not the same height. So that's going to be the easiest way to achieve a sort of uniform setup and make sure everything is square. Just nip all of those tight again. So I'm going to go 2 into the bottom row. And we're going to put 2 into the top row. And this is what our sandwich plates are going to bolt to. So next up we need some of the M8x25s with a flat washer and then the cap washers as well. So obviously flat washer first and then our cap washers. Now again, I'm just going to do these finger tight again for now, because we are definitely going to have to adjust this around as we go, especially when it comes to connecting the 2 uprights together with the relevant wheel plate. So now we're going to repeat that whole process again on the other side. So that's both uprights now roughly installed. Again, we've only left these finger tight because we need to put in the actual wheelbase, which will connect the two uprights together, and then we can square everything up. By leaving them loose, it allows us that extra wiggle room to manoeuvre everything into place carefully. Now, depending on the configuration of your simulator, the video may change from case to case here. We have a direct drive wheelbase, which means we're going to have a front mounted wheelbase assembly. You may have the top deck for, say, belt driven wheels, etc. However, I don't feel as if you've maybe gone for this cockpit if you're still on a belt driven wheel. But nonetheless, at this stage, everybody will follow the same path. From now on, it may differ depending on your configuration. So now, referring back to the instruction manual, we need to find the relevant page for the type of wheelbase that we have. So obviously this one here on page 15 is for the top deck mount, but we have the front deck mount, so we want to be on page 16. Again, it says here, if you purchase the Fanatec DD, go to the next page, and so on. So just make sure that you're getting the relevant page for the wheelbase that you've got. So now with our wheel deck laid out ready for us, we're going to grab our M8x25s, and also looks like we need some spacers. A slight oversight on my behalf. We have two different bags of spacers here, a spacer 23 and a spacer 13.5. Reading the instructions, it says that we need 8 spacers for this. However, the 23s, there's only 4, and the 13.5s, there's an entire bag. I've stupidly put in the 23s. Don't make that mistake. Okay, so now we need some M8x25s and the 4 larger spacers, and this is how we are going to secure in the front mount to the actual wheel deck itself. So the bolts are going to come from the outside of the deck that we just assembled. We're then going to go on with the spacers. Again, this is where you need multiple sets of hands because we're trying to hold multiple things in place and thread them together. We're only going to tighten these ones up just enough to take the weight of the mount itself, because this is going to need some fine tuning to get everything into place and square. But we've got it at least tight enough so that it's rigid so we can manoeuvre it into place. So moving back over to the chassis now, we're going to insert some T-nuts into the uprights which we previously assembled, ready to attach the wheel deck. Now with some M8x25 bolts, along with the M8 washers and cap nuts, we're going to attach the wheel deck to the uprights. Now, attaching the wheel deck into the uprights can often need a little bit of persuasion, but try your best to be careful because the extrusion itself can scratch very easily. You can either sort of drop one end in and then lower the other side in an angle and give it a good push, or try and come in from the front or back and bend the uprights just out a little bit, just to give you that bit of leeway. If you need a bit of extra room, undo these ones at the bottom, just to give yourself a bit more slack to manoeuvre the uprights from side to side. Next up in our assembly process is to mount the bracketry and the extrusion for our gear shifter or handbrake assembly. So let's get cracking with that. We're nearly there. So assembling the gear shifter. So we're going to take the longer 580mm piece and one of the end brackets, and that is just going to screw directly into the end along with a washer. Right, and now for the other side. Now, given that I am from the UK, I am going to assemble this on the left hand side rather than the right, which obviously the instructions would dictate. Again, this profile is sided, so make sure you've got the threaded side where your bolts are going into. Then we have some T-nuts to slide in. And then an end cap to go on. And then another sandwich plate there. And that is going to go with the chamfered screws. Obviously with the sandwich plate with the chamfered edge facing up. Then we just need our 5mm T-handles to tighten that one up. So obviously usually we would be going this side, but we're going to rotate it and we're going to go to the other side. Obviously, for us being in the UK, we are used to the gear shifter on the left side. Something to consider when mounting the gear shifter and handbrake mount is that the mounting point here with this sandwich plate determines the height. To me, the gear shifter and the handbrake definitely do not want to be this high. So I'm going to remove that plate. I'm going to drop this entire assembly right down to this bottom row, just giving us another few mil of clearance, bringing this down a little bit. I think Sim Labs should have made that more clear in the instruction manual, that obviously there is that adjustment there, but it is common sense, and again goes back to the original conversation of the adjustment and the flexibility of an extrusion rig. Okay, the shifter mount is now readjusted to a place where I feel more comfortable with it. Obviously I haven't got my seat mounted yet, so it could even be a question to say I've now lowered it too much. But it's obviously all adjustable, it's modular, so we can move it again. But to me, eyeballing that, I feel that that's probably more likely going to be where I'm comfortable. By the time we get the bracket on here, and then the shifter, etc., obviously it depends what shifters you use, I feel as if this is going to be a better position. So that is now the base of our P1X Ultimate Simulator built. We've got everything from the mounting hardware for our seat to the gear shifter and handbrake brackets, our wheelbase assembly, obviously the uprights where we can now attach our monitor mounting areas to, and ultimately then attach all of our accessories such as speaker mounts, the sim floor, the PC shelf, keyboard tray, mouse tray, and so on. As I mentioned earlier in the video, these simulators are modular. So everybody will have a different configuration. The stage we're at now is really the very base of the P1X Ultimate. Obviously everyone may have different screen configurations, different wheelbases, different pedals, and so on. I've not included the assembly of the screens on this video purely because you have the option for a single, a triple, or even freestanding. So everybody again is going to be different. However, the stage where we're at now is the base, and this, up until this point, I feel as if most people's will be the same. I will most likely time-lapse the rest of the assembly, given that it is unique to my own order and my own configuration. And truthfully, I'm going to take 5 minutes, because I'm knackered. Something to note, that I did reach out to Sim Labs in the hope that they would partner with this video. Given the fact that the P1X Ultimate is a new product to the market, there is literally only one, maybe two videos that I found in the months of trying to research the P1X Ultimate. Now, I was a bit disappointed to find that there wasn't more available to look at the product, to see reviews and so on. So when I reached out to them, I obviously included that to say that, yes, there's no other videos available, so it's a good opportunity to produce one, take the time to pull together a great video. Now, they didn't reply to me, but truthfully, I'm a fucking nobody. So I bought this out of my own pocket, and everything so far has been my own opinion. They have no say over this video, and they will not see it before anyone else does, and who knows, they might never see it. The P1X Ultimate so far, throughout the assembly process, has been fantastic. Everything was well packaged, nothing was missing, and there was no damages to even the outer boxes, so to speak, or to the product itself. One thing I will note, that having various track racer sims in the past, that Sim Labs differs is Track Racer tends to include a lot of spare parts, extra T-nuts, extra bolts, and so on, even down to extra end caps. From the stage that I'm at so far in this build, I have no parts left over, barring a handful of screws and bolts, which would have been from, say, the wheelbase, where you have a different configuration. There was no spares in the base, so unless I've missed something, I feel that that's a missed opportunity. I understand that we don't want additional waste and so on, but it's just nice to have a few spare bolts. If you round one by mistake, you drop one, you lose one. It's just handy to have a few extras in the box as spares, and I do think that Sim Labs, given the price, should really have included some.